Hey everybody, this is Cyrus. Welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. So we have a special guest tonight, which is Susanne Wilson. So Susanne Wilson is one of the leaders in the whole afterlife and mediumship community, participates in tons of conferences. You'll see her doing cool stuff online all the time. She's the author of Soul Smart, and she's an evidential medium out of Carefree, Arizona. So if you've never listened to Susanne Wilson, then this will be a great introduction. I know for a fact that she's a highly evidential medium. She's kind of has a hotline to the other side. And the big thing we talk about on this channel and in Afterlife Topics is trying to get at some level of truthful information about what awaits us in other dimensions, other realities. That's the main point with all this work, is to get information like this out there. And so we're here with Susanne, as well as members, patrons of the Afterlife Topics patron subscription class group. So there's a bunch of people here tonight joining us. And so it'll be great opportunity to ask some questions and talk to Susanne. So actually, let me close Facebook real quick, because I'm getting Facebook notification beeps going off. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Susanne. Hey, Susanne, how you doing?
Hi, Cyrus. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I know you're super busy, so I'm happy you can take some little time out to join our community here on Afterlife Topics. And I'm sure people watching have also probably seen your stuff on the Afterlife Research Education Institute group for members of that group. I know you post there sometimes. There's been a lot of interesting discussions on there. But before we jump into like more of the nuts and bolts of stuff that we can talk about, to somebody who communicates regularly with that side, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how common is the spirit side in your life? Like, how frequently do you communicate, besides just with clients and things like that? How commonly are you like in communication with people on that side, and how long have you been doing it? I know it's probably a lot to ask, but
Actually, it's probably the best question of all. And nobody ever asked me how often I'm in contact with the spirit world. I think people have this assumption that we're on 24/7.
mm-hmm.
And, mediums aren't. We couldn't be, because we have to live the earthly life too. We have to
Mm-hmm.
have our human experiences as well. But I have to tell you, I do turn to my main spirit guide, Leroy, probably every day or every other day, and say, hey buddy, what's going on? Or what do I need to know today? So from that aspect, I'm on, but I'm on for me and I'm on for my family. This started when I was a child, and I would see lights and colors and spirit people around other children. And when I went to school, I got bullied for, I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I would just say, hey, there's somebody standing behind you. And, the other kid would turn around and go, there's nobody there, because they're not tuned in at that moment. And I would get pushed down on the playground. I got my hair pulled. I remember one time I was sitting in a gymnasium in the bleachers, and I had long hair, and my hair was back like this. And I heard them teasing me behind me, calling me Crazy Susie, because of all my spirit woo-woo stuff I would talk about. And this one girl set her boot on my hair. And when I got up, it ripped out a chunk of my hair. And I thought, okay, this is costing me too much to be upfront about what I see and hear. So I went underground for a long time.
I see.
I've never
Okay.
told anybody that before.
Oh, right on. So that's a first. No, I think a lot of people who are involved in this subject, they end up feeling a little bit, awkward with peers, because not everybody accepts some of this information. But at the same time, so many people, there's so many mediums out there who we don't know are mediums because it's a secret.
Exactly.
With you, like, is your communication, is it always of a mental variety? Oh, it's always mental, I know, but like, is it always like getting impressions, or do you communicate clairaudiently where you can hear a voice, or do you communicate astrally, like with astral projection, or all of the above, or what are some ways that you communicate with that side?
It's seeing, hearing, feeling, and simply knowing. So that covers pretty much all the clairs. I would say my number one would be clairvoyance, because I can see objectively and subjectively. And for people who don't know the difference, objective clairvoyance is seeing the spirit as though they're in an object in the room. It's seeing with the physical eyes, where the subjective is more common, and that's seeing in the mind's eye. Now, all I saw when I was younger was objectively, and that can be very disconcerting, because it's like you walk around the corner and you feel like you're going to bump right into somebody, and you walk through them because they're a spirit. So I actually asked and prayed to God when I was younger to change that, because it was just too much overload. But every once in a while now I'll see objectively, and spirits can actually fool me. Sometimes I'll think they're a real person.
And would you say that objectively is, so it's in our 3D reality as opposed to being in like thought space? Because that seems to be one way I can imagine it, is that objectively is like, we're seeing with our eyes, like there's a vase, there's a TV, and then there's a spirit guy with a hat.
Yeah.
But seeing the opposite of that, then by logical standpoint, would be seeing subjectively, which means seeing in your mind's eye. So is there a difference then? Like, what is the difference between these?
It's how we receive it is the difference. It's very startling to see a spirit like a person. I know a lot of people miss their loved ones so much. They say, I just want one more minute with them. If I could just have them sit with me for one more minute. And the thing is, in reality, if they just appeared all of a sudden, you might have some heart problems. It's like that. And that's why I like to teach people to meet their spirit loved ones in meditation, or set up all the right conditions for a dream visit, because it's better for us. It also requires a lot of energy from the spirit to have us see them objectively, like they're a person in the room. For me, it depends on what's going on. Like years ago, I actually, it just popped up in my Facebook feed today, was 4 years ago today. I was in the midst of doing a 3-day experiment with Gary Schwartz, Rhonda Eklund Schwartz, and Jamie Clark here at my office in Carefree. And during that 3 days of doing all these experiments, I was seeing objectively constantly. Montague Keen came in and sat in my reading chair in my office. And I'm like, excuse me, nobody sits in that chair but me, because he was like really here. And part of the experiment was they would select spirits at random and ask them to come and stand in front of me and name them. And since then, that has been presented in scientific papers and at conferences and so forth. After that experiment, though, I didn't see anything objectively for months and months and months. So it's unpredictable, it's uncontrollable, and it's not up to me.
I'm so happy you mentioned Montague Keen and being able to see him like in real life. Montague Keen. I just posted on the Vein Facebook group an article about Montague Keen, and because he's one of the most active like paranormal researchers, still alive today, because he died technically in 2004, but he basically works with a lot of researchers, and is always involved from that side, talking to people from this side and getting involved. I mean, he's materialized before. So did you exchange any words with Montague, or did you just like wave at each other?
Well, unfortunately, because it's an experiment, I'm not able to talk about my part of it. But I will tell you that he has quite a lot to say about helping our two worlds communicate.
That's great, and that leads into like some of the stuff I want to talk about on this show tonight, because I want to go over certain kind of like misconceptions about this whole subject with you, because you are somebody who is in such a great communication with that side. And I'm just trying to shut off my Facebook, Okay, I think I shut it off. Because you're in such great communication with that side, and you've had some really interesting articles. You had one up on your website talking about the whole whether our form on other dimensions, because some people have ideas that it's very fixed. You're only an orb of light floating around, and you were kind of debunking that conception. And so I kind of want to toss a couple of other ideas around at you, and you can kind of just share a little bit about what you've learned about this, because there's been some very interesting subjects being debated recently on the forums, like on the AREI forum, as well as on Afterlife Topics and other groups. And I always feel like kind of my philosophy is like, ask questions and ask people who are involved with that side, or who have direct communication, because sometimes people without any communication, like, they have theories, and those theories tend to lead to a lot of people getting really confused. But also at the same time, though, we can't say, like, no one is, like, in this kind of world, like, nobody is ever, like, completely wrong, in the sense that I think that there's a world dimension, a plane of existence for everybody. So it's not like, someone who says that the other side is this way is incorrect. But I think where people kind of end up confusing people is when they say it's this way or the highway. And so I want to toss a couple ideas out there. Does that make sense, Susanne?
Yeah, you're actually talking about one of the subjects that's been on my mind lately, which is this mixed spirituality. I read a popular book, I decide it's the gospel, and I'm sticking to it. And it's a little troubling to me.
Yeah, it's to those not familiar, it's mixed spirituality. It's like McDonald's getting a McBurger, a chicken sandwich, but it's just like fast food, spiritual fast food that you read from, like, some quotes online or something, and then you develop a whole philosophy about that. I think it was actually Travis who had a punch and Echo came up with that term. So it's kind of funny because it kind of stuck.
It's out there now. And to be clear, this isn't to denigrate an author or a book. It's really to wake people up to their own critical thinking skills, their own discernment.
Right. So it's kind of like, if there's a really complicated subject that involves different subjects like philosophy and science, and then somebody gets the whole perspective because they, like, look for quotes online. It doesn't mean that people making the quotes are wrong. It's like, you don't gain the necessary knowledge about a subject from, like, reading quotes. You actually have to dig deeper into it before you can then tell other people that this is the way it is, right? So that's kind of the way I see it. So it's kind of like an educational problem, I guess, and it's rampant, but we can kind of chip away at it a little bit. Now a couple of topics I'll bring up. Maybe you will or will not disagree with that, so I'm not saying that this is like a myth per se, but there are elements of these topics that are kind of like, things that I think need to be addressed a little bit, and then you can just tell me objectively, I guess, if you think that they're, kind of what you may think of it. So I have some notes here pulled up, so let me take a quick look. Okay, so in your opinion, Susanne, since you've talked to lots of people on that side telepathically, and verbally and clairaudiently, and people who objectively materialized in front of you and all this kind of stuff, does spirit say that their world is a consistent place? For example, there's a temple or a school or an astral restaurant people go to and eat there, and it's still there the next day? Or is the other side kind of like living in a dream? So we're talking about subjectivity versus objectivity. So you imagine a bakery, and you're in a bakery. You imagine that you're riding on a dragon, and you're riding on a dragon. That just the scene shifts from one moment to the next based upon whatever is going through your mind, because reality is just continually being just generated out of people's minds, like kind of like a dream. Or is it like there's an objective world like we're in now? So do you have any opinions about that topic, which actually was brought up recently on my group?
It's a great question, and there's no clear answer because I've seen it both ways. I will say that the spirit people seem to know when they are spontaneously creating an experience versus they're having a group or community experience, and it doesn't seem to matter. The difference to them does not seem to matter to them at all. They're still carrying forward their memories of who they were here on the earth, their personalities, the love bonds with the folks here. They can have a community experience, and they seem to be able to have that, like you said, jump on the back of a dragon. I've heard things like, I'll be in a session and the spirit will say, I'm hang gliding. And then hang gliding, he always had a fear of that. Well, he doesn't now. And he's doing loop-de-loops and things like that, that according to our mechanics and our physics, it would be really difficult to do, but it's effortless there.
But do you think the difference then would be, okay, so you could be hang gliding let's say you're in an astral city, and it's literally somebody who has, like, what we call like a hang gliding company, or for him it's a free service, and they actually literally go to a mountain or a cliffside, and they jump off on the astral world, and they go hang gliding, and then they finish it, and then they say, thanks for letting me use your service, and then they go back to their astral house and watch astral Netflix or whatever it is that they do. um, do you think it's then like that, which would be, this would be like philosophically, this is an objective experience, right? Or is it that, they just exist and they're like, I'm going to go hang gliding, then they visualize it, and now they're in that visualization and they're hang gliding, and then they stop visualizing, and then it's gone, the mountains are gone, that whole scene is gone, because it was kind of like a dream that they made. Do you think, do you know the difference, or do you know what I'm saying?
Well, the best way I know how to answer that is performers, artists, and musicians here on Earth, when they get to the other side, they do speak of going to concert halls where people gather and they can look out in the audience and recognize souls. Not because they're looking at their faces or their appearances, but just because I can feel people I know are in this audience, and there seem to be regular concerts at regular venues. So I guess we could extrapolate from there that if it was your version of heaven to have a hang gliding rental store, you might have that.
Well, it seems like, because often what I argue, and sometimes, I mean, it's with the out of body experience stuff, because sometimes people will push an idea and they say, well, all of experiences on that side are mentally created. So it's a mental generation. You're not really, or you are really hang gliding, but it's a construct. It's a dream that you've created. And basically what they're saying is that everybody who lives on that side is kind of like existing in this kind of dream state where you imagine stuff, then it exists, but then it doesn't exist the next moment, right? So you're in a forest, cool. Now I'm by the ocean, now I'm this. There's no like consistent place. And I have found no evidence of this actually in people can go into mental spaces, but in my experiences in like an astral city, like it's a city one day to the next. So you can go there, and you can leave a note on a wall, and then you can go back to that same place and then see the note 5 days later, right? So it's like it's an objective world. So that's kind of my opinion. So I tend to kind of disagree with the idea that it's like we all go into like a kind of a dreamscape. But I don't know, because I have my astral experiences, but maybe mediumship communication is more accurate than that. So does that make sense?
Well, how else would these concert halls, these healing halls, things we hear about, they may use different labels or terminology to explain them to us, but how would these things exist consistently if everything was just a momentary dream?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the consistency is the big deal, and then the people who kind of fight about this topic, and they'll say, "Well, it's not any less real because you imagined it." And I say, "Okay, well, maybe philosophically that is true, but if there's inconsistency, then it calls, like, you have to consider like your lifestyle." So, for example, if do you want to go to visit the astral version of Japan, or do you want to create an illusionary one inside your mind? Now, personally, I would rather go to like the real thing, because it would be like thousands of years of history and like ancient rulers who have passed away and are living on that side, and it would be a consistent like real place you can explore. Because if I create this stuff in my mind, like in a lucid dream, like in my experience, it's very like on the surface it looks like it has all the bells and whistles, but if you dig deeper, it's very limited. For example, you might meet people who are not real, that are created through your own mind. So it's kind of like NPC characters in a video game or something. Like, it's not necessarily like objective or shared people, and that the stuff that you see might be limited to also what your own mind is creating. So this creates a disconcerting feeling for me, to think that we might be stuck in like dream realities. And it also has for other people, because they're like, I want to, be in a real place with real neighbors, that I can, wake up and meet people and hang out and, explore or go to other planets or whatever it might be. I don't want to just make it all, in my mind. What do you think about that?
The spirit people have told us in probably about 150 years of data collected through mediums who were deemed reliable and out of body travelers. They tell us that where they are is more real than when they were here on the earth plane, that all of their senses are heightened, and they talk about themselves being solid. They talk about sitting on solid furniture. We know that nothing's really solid in our universe. We just have molecules vibrating at various rates. So it's hard to reconcile that it's some kind of stream of consciousness, good dream, bad dream, mediocre dream that we slip into when we leave this body. For me, just doesn't add up.
Yeah, it doesn't really add up. And it's almost something that maybe should be asked of spirit in a more direct manner. And my experience asking spirit people about this is they look at me like I'm crazy. Just like you'd ask this question to somebody here, unless somebody's like really into philosophy. It's like nothing's real, man. Life's just a dream. It's like, okay, some guy who smokes weed asks that. It makes sense. But if you just like do what I do, you just grab some random person. It's like, is this a dream or is it an objective reality? It's like, dude, chill out. What are you talking? Like that. That's kind of the reactions that I've gotten. So I haven't had any personal reason to believe that. What spirit have told me is that they can enter into these kind of like shared dream realities, and it's almost like it's a hobby that they do. So it's like, let's create this reality, then we'll slip into it. Kind of like the film Inception, I guess. And this is, and it's also been compared to the holodeck from Star Trek. But it's not necessarily like if you leave the holodeck behind, you're back in like the real world again. So that's been my perception, but I don't want to just tell people because it's just my experiences, right? So it doesn't have so much value. It's just me subjectively saying stuff. So that's why I'm hoping to get more information about this from like other people who have connections probably better than I have.
Well, Cyrus, I think we need to look at what's driving the question in the first place and who's listening to the answers that are being given. It's one thing to approach something for the philosophical value and to have a debate and to examine issues further. It's another thing to know that we have people who are hurting, who are reading all of the suppositions and speculation, and they want to know that their loved ones are still their loved ones and that they can still connect with them and that they'll be there and they'll be that person one day, when they arrive to meet their loved ones on the other side of life. And the answer to that question is yes. That's a resounding yes. That we have plenty of evidence for, don't we?
Yes, yeah, of course. And that was actually leading into the next stuff I was going to ask about. So that question was more related to, I guess, the environment. And by the way, I know I said in the last 20 minutes it turned more to the audience, but we were delayed by like 10 minutes. So I think we were still chatting for like another 20 minutes, and then I'll have people, and patrons to ask stuff too. So just to move along. So yeah, that was kind of the next direction I was going. And so here's another topic that came up, and I'm not going to hesitate to mention who. Usually I don't mention who, but this person is so high profile that it's okay. And I know a lot of people get a lot of value from this person. But there was a video on YouTube that was posted, and I'm not even being hyperbolic or exaggerating. It's Esther Hicks from like the Abraham Hicks stuff, and she said when you pass away, somebody asked her what is life in the quote non-physical like, and then she said, when you leave this world, you no longer have a nose, so you cannot smell. You no longer have a mouth, so you cannot taste. You no longer have eyes, so you cannot see. But as spirit, you have the greater sense of spirit, so you can feel people around you on a greater new level, even if you cannot see them, smell them, or taste them, but you can sense them because spirit exists non-physically. So this is what she said, and obviously it brought a lot of rancor in my group when the video was posted, and I probably have an idea or two about how I might feel about this. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I wonder if we're not meant to take that so literally, because we're talking about smelling, getting the aroma going through our nose, our glands, transmitting to our brain. That's my first take on it. I've not heard this before, but maybe it wasn't meant literally. Maybe it was meant metaphorically, that we don't have the human body anymore and we have a stronger sense now. I don't know. I'm not going to read meanings into this, but on the face of it, it's a philosophy, and that's all.
Yeah. It's a philosophy. So I mean, it's like my response to that was, if you are having a dream, then you can see visually. So, but even if your eyes are not active, so we can't make the argument that somebody in another dimension that no longer has the ability to see things, when we know we can see things by just going internally dreaming, and then we can see vistas and whatever it is, because the way sight actually works is the eyeballs are just interpreting light coming through the eyes into the brain. But if you have information going directly in, then you don't even need eyes, you can still see. So I think, I think that was like an example kind of like misinformation. But there is the issue that people do hear that, and then they'll say, I know that my loved ones can no longer see, hear, or smell, but they exist around me as a spirit who can do, like this kind of stuff. And I think that can be troubling to a lot of people who are grieving. And I don't think there's any, like, in my opinion, I don't think there's any real evidence to back up that supposition. So I want to toss that one out there, but I have some more subjects I'm gonna toss your way. Not to just hit you rapid fire here, but let's see. Looking through my notes. Okay, so we talked about subjectivity and objectivity. So here's one. Well, I guess we should just address real quick the whole appearance thing. We often use the terminology non-physical, but sometimes, I find that terminology to be a bit difficult to use, because what is physical, what is not physical? How can we draw the distinction between physical and non-physical? Sometimes people say, if you leave this dimension, because you no longer have the earth body, now you exist as a, quote, spirit. So the definition of spirit, besides alcohol, doesn't mean you become liquor when you die, but you become the essence of something. So the spirit of love, the spirit of justice. That's how we use in the English language the word spirit. So sometimes I hear people argue that what a spirit is just the, like, intangible essence of a person who does not have like anymore. You can't still have a body if you're in another dimension. So this is, I think, people with like a limited understanding of what this topic is all about. They don't understand when we talk about like other worlds, astral planes, things like that, or the concept of an astral body, or that we still have an embodiment. So based on your knowledge, what do you have to say about that?
I have to go back to what I've been hearing for 4 decades from the spirit world. And the last dozen years, I've been hearing this in earnest. It's the message of tell the people here to raise their vibration here before they cross over, because you're going to arrive in a place that reflects your level of compassion for others and self here at first. And then you'll grow from there. And then when you do arrive, it feels like a solid world, only more vibrant. You don't have to go walk over to a flower and sniff it to smell it. You can simply know the flower. And maybe that has something to do with what Abraham was saying. But it's to know your loved ones that are there, and to know yourself as a soul completely. Nothing can be hidden. Here on earth, we have the conscious and the subconscious. There, we just have the consciousness. So warts and all, we know ourselves really well, and our loved ones do too. They seem to have arms to hug each other. They have physical contact. They make art and appreciate art. They make music and appreciate music. How this is accomplished is one of the great mysteries. But I can tell you that nothing is lost of our relationships with the folks that are over there. In fact, in many ways, I've heard this said many times by many people, in many ways, we are their heaven. They're checking on us. They're keeping track of us. They're sending us signs and symbols and synchronicities and all of that. So they're not losing the perspective of what we know as Earth. But when we get there, it's more like the better version. of Earth, as long as we're basically decent people. And I mean people that mostly do the right thing, that don't hurt others, that don't set out to take advantage of others, that are not, you know, killers and molesters and things like that. Um, but upon our arrival, whatever frame of mind we've been in and the vibration we've been in colors that first arrival place. So I suppose if you're expecting to float around like a ball of light, when you first get there, you're going to be a stupid ball of light for a while until somebody helps you out. And then of your own free will, you can decide to accept a greater reality. The best example I can give you from my personal life is I have a relative who is a priest. And even though my preacher granddad was very aware of the spirit world and taught me as a child that it was okay, my relative now on earth who's a priest is telling me I'm going to be in fire and brimstone when I get to the other side, and he'll pray for me and come and rescue me.
Oh,
Um,
jeez.
right? Okay. So his arrival on the other side, and I'm not wishing him, you know, knock on wood, I'm not wishing him an arrival there anytime soon, but his arrival on the other side, he'll probably arrive at a church where he'll go up and speak and do a service. And then he'll go looking for me and find out if I'm there, or unless I'm still here, he'll find out that I'm not in fire and brimstone, but I'm in a place that maybe he's going to have to work to visit.
And
I don't
he'll be in a community basically, which is a very religious community. And so something I've discovered, and people may or may not agree with this, and that's perfectly fine. But I do believe that like the area around this Earth that encompasses what we call like the astral version of Earth that a lot of out of body explorers go to, there is a geographic like matching between this world and that world. So sometimes we hear about these places and we imagine that it's a non-specific location. It's kind of like a magical, when you think of like a magical kingdom, right? It doesn't exist in like a specific place. It kind of comes out of the ether. But I'd be surprised. This is actually something I was talking to about with Paula here in the group, Paula, because you're talking about your astral experiences, and that you were meeting your deceased loved one, and it was the astral version of Hawaii. But it seemed, of course, like this beautiful astral world. But if you ask somebody like, "Where are we?" then they would answer, "Well, we're in Hawaii." And sometimes, like when we hear about like a religious version of the other side, like where is it actually? Like it could be in, the equivalent of Kansas or something, out in the big field, and we would get a vision of that and be like, this is this heavenly place, but it could be like a religious community that has created like their own little kind of pocket of an afterlife, on the kind of the astral Earth equivalent. And it becomes its own kind of realm with its own belief system that may or may not have legitimacy depending on what that belief is. And certainly a lot of people with the fire and brimstone attitude, I think they create their own communities on that side that just like divide and get bigger and bigger, and it attracts the people here who have those thoughts. And I don't know if who knows how long they end up in those communities, but it's up to people to broaden their minds and learn how to not just be stuck in one way of thinking, which reflects their one environment. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And I've heard the theories that those who are lower vibrational when they're on the earth, like the school shooters, that is a very popular discussion right now in groups I've heard, because we've had another round of school shootings. It's just gut wrenching to think about it. But when they get to the other side, that those people of that ilk are gathered together and telling their war stories and still getting their jollies out of the things that they've done here. But the good news is, my experience has been from the spirit world telling me that there are rescue groups that will go to those lower levels and say, is there anybody here willing to look at the light or think of the light and want to be the light? If so, we'll work with you and we'll keep working with you. And that these rescue groups, the makeup of the groups, the souls that do it may change. It sounds like it's a big burnout job to me.
Yeah.
But they never give up. They never give up. And they look for anybody that just has a glimmer of hope of changing. And so somebody might stay in that horrible vibration. But these are people that they really earned through their thoughts, words, and actions where they are. They're not being tortured. They're just with, I guess they're just with their own kind.
And what's really interesting, like some of us who do the out of body stuff, is that when you think about entering a lower vibrational realm, like all these concepts, they seem so alien to us, but it's funny how similar it is to this world, because you can be in an astral city like I have many times. And like, to go back to our first point, it's not a dream world, it's not a constructed reality, but it's like an objective place shared by people. And you can go into a bad neighborhood and you'll notice, okay, you know, the buildings are getting worse looking, the paint is peeling, there's like a weird sticky feeling in the atmosphere, you begin getting like feeling weird around the people that are walking by, and that's getting worse and worse till you're like, nope, I'm not going any deeper into this. And so that's what it's like going into like these darker planes on that side. But the funny thing is that that's just like how it is in this world if you're in like a bad part of town. So it's interesting how that, you know, it's not completely different, but I mean, it is different because now it's more on the surface, like the mental influence on that reality. But there's parallels just between this world, because it's not like this world is that extraordinarily different. As you know, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, as a matter of fact, I do. I started astral traveling as a child. I would fly places with a little red-haired boy who later turned out to be my guide, who's now a full-grown man, but the way that I perceive him. I was in Astral Phoenix just this past week.
Yay, I've been there so many times. I've
There's
met people in Astral Phoenix. I know Astral. Anyway, I'm sorry, go on.
I went to down this weird neighborhood where I don't know, people just like they weren't really talking, and I was like moving past them, and there was this big building, almost like an auditorium or a coliseum type of thing that I don't even think we have, because you know the Cardinals play out in Glendale. But anyway, it was this weird coliseum type building, and it had the top of it looked like a king's crown, you know, those little spikes that sit up with lights on them. And I was asking people, do I want to go in there? What's going on in there? And they're talking about, you don't want to go in there. And I didn't. So I have no idea what
Ha.
was in there, but it was a strange neighborhood and I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I was thinking at the time, wow, Astral Phoenix is a real hole. But
Well, it depends on where you go. I've been to parts of Astral Phoenix that, I mean, it can be such a mixed bag, just like this world, but there's really nice parts.
I
And
saw it. I left. I came back to Astral Carefree, which I love, you know.
yeah, I mean, Astral Tucson is an interesting place because there's, have you ever been to, like, you've been to Tucson a lot, I'm sure, right? Like Speedway Boulevard where the U of A is. But it's Speedway is, well, first of all, Astral Tucson is extremely like sometimes the astral versions of our places are actually bigger and crazier than on this world, even with sometimes even bigger populations, believe it or not, because it encompasses not only, in my experience, many people who have passed away from this world, but many people from other, environments. Either they came from that world, or even non-human entities. Sometimes you'll see an extraterrestrial walking around. I mean, it's not even a big deal on that side. But like in Astral Tucson, it's interesting. It's so well developed. It's these huge like silver buildings, and downtown Tucson kind of sucks on this side. It's not like there's like really interesting skyscrapers, but there's all these silver buildings. And then Speedway Boulevard, there's like so much crazy activity that I've had a lot of experiences like on that street. And people just, I mean, like the best way you can think of people having like like bar crawls and things on this world, but it's just a lot more involved in that, with like crazy characters. Like I mentioned, extraterrestrials, but it could be like non-human entities and human entities, and people involved in all kinds of just like weird stuff late at night. And it's a very interesting, very strange place. I guess it kind of is on this side too, but not nearly as extreme as that. But it is interesting that we can relate to the same astral environment.
Weird, because I as I was leaving, I could see behind me, I could see, oh, I missed the pretty part of Phoenix. And I ran into these two beings, and they said, oh, you look like you need a break. Like, yeah, I do, because I was trying to get back here to where, Carefree is amazing. It's the best kept secret in Arizona. But they took me into this little office room, in Astral Phoenix before I left. And as we sat down in this tiny little room with just like a basic folding table and chairs, and I noticed their faces were very long and their mouths were very, very, very narrow, like maybe a couple inches like that. So it was all telepathic. Nobody's really talking. And they said, well, you wanted to see this and you asked to see this. So, we assisted today. And they were making suggestions of other things to see in the city. And I'm like, okay, thank you very much. I'm leaving now. And I literally, I do this a lot when I'm out, I want to know, okay, what's going on right now? I'll take my 2 fingers to try to push them through my hand. And of course they go through, whether it's a dream, a lucid dream, or whether it's astral travel. But when I sat with these beings, communicating with them, I knew beyond any doubt it wasn't lucid dreaming, it was astral travel. I could feel their personalities, I could feel their souls, they're individuals, they're not people I know, but they just seem to like want to hang out and help. And so, yeah, you have these interesting experiences, but I don't think they were human beings.
Yeah, I mean, definitely could be ET, non-human, but that's a really good point. We'll turn it over to the audience here in just a couple minutes, but it's really interesting point too, just about the nature of lucid dreaming versus being in these astral environments, because I want to tie this back into kind of the first thing I was asking about, like subjective versus objective worlds. You can talk about Astral Phoenix, but like I've also been to Astral Phoenix. And another place that have had many experiences is Astral Los Angeles. And I've been talking to people online in the out-of-body community in Los Angeles. They describe the same things that I've described. A lot of kind of 1920s Art Deco style locations, kind of like the golden age of Hollywood is like still going on that side. And so people, have experiences there. They say the same thing. And also about the same, like there's like really bad neighborhoods on the southeast side of the city. Then it's all like really like beautiful, like Art Deco, golden age of Hollywood stuff on the west side. And it's like, oh, this is all stuff I've seen. And then there's other people completely independently corroborating that. So the people who do think that all of it's just like, you pass away and then all of the other side is just continuous dream where nothing is consistent. Like, I don't agree with that at all. I actually see it as an objective environment that, multiple people can corroborate that they've been here, they've been here, they've been here. And that is still, I mean, it's another dimension, but it is still what we call it is one element of the quote afterlife is those conditions. And it's not an illusion. It's not, because I'll ask you one more thing. I don't know if you agree with this or not, but basically, some people have been commenting that when we have experiences on the quote astral plane, that it is a less enlightened place. That really, if you're in the true afterlife, you're a light being in a formless world and all this kind of stuff. Which I think those types of places do exist, but I find myself very skeptical of this idea that okay, you're not enlightened unless you're in this type of condition, like on the 6th level, the 7th level, the 8th level. It's like, well, you've only been having experiences, Cyrus, on the 4th level, so you don't really know about what the afterlife is like because you're in this temporary place that only unenlightened people go to. So I hear this a lot. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I sat on a panel about a year ago, and there was a colleague on the panel talking about there are exactly this many levels in heaven, because I've heard this from a guide and I've written about it and I've described them. And when the mic came to me and I was asked, what do you think? I said, how do you limit an unlimited consciousness? How do you limit it?
Yeah, that's exactly what Mickey from the Leslie Flint tape said, was that all this idea of like the 6th level, 7th level, 8th level are all human constructions. That in reality, there's millions of levels, and this is just our own limited attempt to try to create a system that makes sense to us. And then when you get those systems, you get what I perceive as like this elitism. It's like, well, you're on this level, so it means you haven't arrived yet. Enlightened people are on this level and that level, which by itself, contradicts the whole idea about enlightenment because you're judging people. So That's been my experience. So it's really fun. It's interesting you brought that up because indeed, it's just, I don't think you can constrict things to those levels. Other people might disagree, or they might say that it should be seen in a more broad way. But nowadays, like I don't even use those terminologies. But thanks for mentioning that and clarifying that. So yep, we are discussing with Susanne kind of the myths and misconceptions. I'll turn it over to the audience, but as a quick midway through point or past midway through, I think we have like maybe 20 minutes left. I just want to mention real quick, thanks for watching this. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you like this discussion, if you like what we're doing here, Afterlife topics, going into these deep subjects, which I think are beneficial for everybody, please go down, hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, share the video, like the video, all that really helps keep us going. But especially if you want to really see the community, take off, then I encourage you to become a patron. You can join these classes and be here on the ground level and be able to talk to guests like Susanne, as well as meet with me about any questions or anything, or as well as join in for class discussions twice a week about all kinds of metaphysical discussions. So those are for patrons at the Patreon, which is patreon.com/afterlife topics. The classes are for $30 and up a month. But even if you just put in like $3 a month, it helps me with keeping the website going, the Facebook group going, working on new book projects, working on offline meetings and other events and things like that. And also this YouTube page, being able, taking the time out to make the videos, keep all this stuff going. I live out of a backpack, travel the world, so a few bucks helps me out. So I encourage anybody watching, if you're interested, to get involved with that. Okay, so with that out of the way, so we've had a really engaging discussion with Susanne, a lot of really interesting topics I wanted to throw out there. These are all things that are being debated a lot on the forums. So I wanted to, get her opinion, and maybe I was being a little bit preachy with my own opinions as well. But I let the audience decide. But now we have a bunch of people here who are here in the Zoom group with us. So whoever has questions for Susanne, we'll probably keep this next like 20, 30 minutes. We don't want to keep poor Susanne here all day. But so, we'll try to limit it, to a few minutes for each question if everybody wants to ask something. So whoever has a question or wants to ask something, you can go ahead and speak up, or if you raise your hand, I can pick you up from the group. But some of your okay, Paula, your hand is raised first, so that's how it works. I'm going to go straight to you, Paula.
Hi, Susanne.
Hi.
So I have a question, that I know it's impossible to really know it, but what Spirit tells you about soul planning and exit door, like especially when there are, group of people that go away from a terrorist attack or massive shooting. And I struggle on this because I lost my son in a terrorist attack and 86 people that left with him that day. And so I always struggled thinking if he was on the wrong place, the wrong spot, and his life was, cut shorter because of some nonsense, act of violence of others. So I don't know what Spirit tells you about this because it's happening so much, and and it's really makes me so sad all the time I hear on this news of,
Well, first off, Paula, my heart goes out to you. That's very brave of you to tell us your story before you ask the question. And it really puts things into context for people, that we have to be very careful with our philosophical debates and discussions, that we're not unintentionally hurting people. Now, sometimes people will find a way to be hurt no matter what you say. I get that. But you have a really wonderful question here. Like, was his life cut short? The first thing that I want to say is, I don't purport to have all the answers. I don't purport to be 100% sure of anything. I simply tell people what I've experienced, what I've heard from reliable spirits in the spirit world, and the research that I've done. So having said that, I have a belief based on all of the research and everything I've heard that nobody leaves before their time, that there has to have been some kind of going home point. Some people call it an exit point. And around that time, like a potential leaving for the other side of life around that time. Otherwise, a death by any means couldn't be completed. And so could your son have had other potential points to leave in his life? Sure. Sure, absolutely. I don't know how many potential leaving points or exit points that we have, but I can tell you that the spirit world has been telling me and telling a lot of mediums and spiritual teachers here that this is not a soul plan to be murdered. This is not a soul plan to have some violent end. It's a function of somebody else's free will gone awry. However, it couldn't be completed if the person who does have death by the killing, it couldn't have been completed if they didn't have a potential leaving point around that time. Okay, so I know that doesn't help with the grief that you've gone through. If it helps you to believe that, yes, he came here to be murdered by a terrorist, you know, and I don't think that helps you, no. But there are people who want to hear, oh, it was set this way. It was part of the soul plan to come here and be mowed down. And that makes them feel better, I guess. I didn't realize that. But they want to know that they didn't miss an opportunity to protect them, or they didn't miss an opportunity to stop them or change something that day. We all are subject to the free will of ourselves and others on this earth. Earth is the lower vibration. Having said that, there seem to be a lot of people very fond of Earth on the other side of life. They look at this wistfully and say, oh, what a thrill ride, man. You know, I had all these experiences, and oh yeah, that one was really painful, but the pain dulls. Another thing that I want to say to you is, even though they're not remembering pain here, it's hard to like even conjure up that memory on the other side of life. They see our pain. And I applaud you because I pick up, because I can see you on Zoom, I can see your aura right now. I could sense it if I wanted to without even seeing your picture. You have a huge pink light around you. And what that tells me is you have a high expression of compassion in the heart chakra around you. And you've done a lot of work to heal your own soul from this pain. They may even have a parade to celebrate you when you go to the other side at your naturally appointed time. So those are my thoughts just right off the top of my head. I would love to see all of this violence stop on the earth. I think we probably have I don't know. I don't want to say we have more centuries to go before that happens. Something could change sooner, but it's free will gone awry, basically.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And yeah, I mean, it's like on the topic of free will, it's like free will can't exist unless free will is something that can affect other people. Your choice is affecting other people, because we have to be responsible for our own decisions. If your choices did not affect other people, then people wouldn't be practicing free will, would they? Because it's something else would be controlling everything. So
well, it goes to intention. It's about intention. The intention of a shooter is to go in and wreak havoc, right? So let's say somebody fell asleep driving a bus. They didn't intend to kill people. They weren't a horrible person. Maybe they were not responsible because they didn't get enough sleep the night before or something, but the intention wasn't to do harm. They'll still have some healing work to do on the other side, just self-forgiveness. But if their intention wasn't, I'm going to crash this bus and kill everybody on it, I don't see them going into a horribly low vibration with people who did intend to kill. Although, like I said, there's still going to be self-forgiveness work to go through.
And well, Jürgen Zive very, very, explicitly describes places that people involved in terrorism have ended up on the astral conditions. And that's in the book Vistas of Infinity. If anybody wants to, minds,
I know. I didn't read that part. I read the book and I didn't read that part. I'm like, I didn't want to have my thoughts go there.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, but okay. Anyway, so who else has a question for Susanne? Just speak up on the mic, and it's going to kind of come first serve, I guess.
I have a question, and
Go
this
ahead.
is kind of personal, but I also want to make it general. Suzanne, when I had my reading with you a few years ago, you told me that Shayna was with animals because she loved animals, and she actually even mentioned she was with the giraffe. My question is, I had to put my dog to sleep yesterday.
Oh no.
So I've heard of people when they cross over seeing their pets, but have you ever heard from a pet when they crossed over seeing their owner?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I have. And it's funny because when I connect with the pet on the other side, at first, I don't know if I'm connecting with a pet on the earth or a pet on the other side. I have to sort of figure it out. It's so different from people because they come in so pure and so loving, and they're not like concerned about how they're going to do in the communication or whatever. And so I have to figure out, okay, are you in this world? Are you in that world? And one of the first things they'll tell me is it's thank you. I get a big TY coming from their heart to mine for
Mm.
thank you for letting me go. They want to reassure that they're a person here, that that it was the right time. Okay, they didn't wait too long and they didn't do it too soon. So they do that, and then they'll show me who they're with. Always, always. And I can't help but just hearing your voice start to tune in. Do you know what's really interesting is I see your daughter with braids.
Mhm.
She's wanting to show me her braids, and she's wanting to show me like having a dog sitting across her, and she's rubbing her braid on the dog. So I don't know if that's symbolic for something or if she's like just all over this dog, but I keep seeing the bottom of her braid, like, and she's petting him, petting and petting. Anyway, hold on a second. That's really weird. Brian, I have to ask you something really personal. Did you see your dog's soul? Because I'm being told that you experienced this dog's soul at the time of leaving the body.
I feel like I felt it. Yes, I didn't see it, but I felt like I felt it.
Like it's like whoosh, like this.
Yeah,
Not going up,
yeah,
but like going through.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I see that experience there. And she shows me she was sitting in the corner of the room, and it was like,
Well,
let's go.
it's
Let's go.
interesting you said that because, and Caleb will kill me for saying this, but my other daughter saw her in the corner of the room.
Good. So that was a setup by your girl. That's a setup because she knows you're going to be on here. She's going to make sure you see this meeting today. She makes sure her sister's going to see her where she is, and the medium lady's going to confirm it. She's very good at that.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Susanne. I'm glad you were able to get some info too for Brian right there. Who else maybe has a question for Suzanne? I can't see some of you guys' videos are turned off, but you can just speak up and we'll hear you.
I have a question, I guess.
Is this Keely, right?
Yep.
I should have your voice completely recognized by now, but you could have been Teresa because I'm not used to her voice. Maybe she sounds the same as you. Anyway, what's up, Keely?
Okay. It's kind of a personal question. I don't know if that's all right if we ask that. Yeah.
We can try.
Okay. We just had a friend pass away on Wednesday, and so I'm just wondering now, would he be settled in the afterlife now or not? Or
He might be partying. He might be like, go to the welcome home first, and we'll get into all this other stuff later. Was there some toxicity that caused the heart to stop?
Yeah.
He's standing right behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're so super sensitive.
Yeah.
He's also saying you're going to hear my voice in your head because you have a strong throat chakra. He's showing me.
Okay.
Where we hear through the clairaudience. You're going to hear me. You're going to hear me. And do you know what? You know why he'd show me his belly?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's laughing, and he says, it's effing awesome.
Is it? That sounds like him. We were gone and we're unable to say goodbye. It happened very suddenly.
Oh, don't say goodbye. You're going to
I
piss
know.
him off. Don't piss him off with goodbye. He'll be around. But yeah, he just told me he's got to go back to the party.
Well, tell him to have fun at the party.
You just did.
Okay. I just did.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Keely. You know, I've had astral experience in parties. Actually, Marcus Lang, the physical medium, who trying to get on this show, he was describing because he's getting used to having astral experiences for the first time, like out of body experiences. And I gotta mute somebody. Sorry, D. Or who's
I have a question.
Noise. Who's talking? I'm sorry.
Teresa?
Okay, sorry, Teresa. Okay, 1 second, Teresa. I guess I'll just finish real quick.
I'm sorry.
Going to these parties for the first time, and I've had them also. So, I mean, in kind of Earth-like environments, on that side, I mean, when you don't have the 9 to 5 crap and stuff you have to think about in this world, oftentimes people's first thing they want to do is let's just have fun and socialize and relax. Anyway, Teresa.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you didn't interrupt. Yeah.
Okay, I have a kind of a strange question for Susanne.
Nice.
I'm usually pretty sensitive, and lately I've been feeling like there is a spirit of someone, but I'm not sure, that sits in my recliner, and every so often I feel like they're listening to me. But I've had so many deceased relatives that I'm not really sure who it is, or if maybe I'm just crazy.
I'm not tuning into anybody around you right now, but I can ask my guide, Leo Roy, if he has any advice or input.
Does that kind of make sense, Teresa, or do you have anything else?
Here's what he says. Leo Roy says that you have, and like I said, I'm not connecting with a spirit person for you, but my guide says that you have a joy or play or happiness guide, whatever you want to label her, that comes in like a little playful girl that's trying to get you to lighten up and enjoy life more. So he's telling me you have a guide really wanting to get your attention.
Oh, okay. That makes sense, because sometimes I get depressed.
Yeah, life's a little too serious and introspective and overanalyzed right now.
Yes.
So it's
that explains why I feel happy whenever I sense her.
Yeah, well, that would be why, but you got to go do something with that according to your guide. It's not my advice, but what Roy says is that you got to get out more and do some fun stuff for you.
I just recently had fun in northern Arizona. I just love Flagstaff and Sedona, and that felt really good. But I do need to get out more. That's true.
Yeah, I love it when guides come around and it's like we get so curious about who this is, and we're thinking family, and we're not getting anything there. We're not getting a sign. That's a clue that there's somebody that maybe you don't know exactly who they are, but they're loving and beneficial, and they're trying to get you to pay attention to an aspect of your life. So, good question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a good answer. It's really interesting that, there can be, a specific person from that side on a specific mission for your life. And usually, it means so many people get so caught up in the, in our work, working life here that we forget to, have fun and integrate that. That seems like something that is it's a valuable thing. Does anybody else have any questions for Susanne? We can do a couple more maybe.
I would like another question if I can.
Okay, Paula.
My out-of-body experience that my son is already passed away 3 years ago, but a couple 2 weeks after he passed, I had this intense out-of-body I was sleeping, I just fell asleep, and I just saw him on the corner of the room that was observing me, and it was a kind of like ghost, like in a way that only his upper body I was seeing, and I remember to recognize it was dressed very nice, and his face, it was so clear, but I couldn't see his legs, was only kind of a foggy, his upper body. But I just felt like I was in this between sleeping, and I felt like my soul jump and get out from my body and jump and go to him, and I was like, Nicholas, and I just kind of went on, you know, and I was trying to, and it just didn't look in, it didn't look in with his eyes on my eyes. It turned his face when I jumped on him, and I was trying to, you know, with my finger to push his face to look in front of my face, but you know, he didn't want it. And then I just like found myself back awake on my body. And I was wondering, did I scare him, or maybe it was too overwhelming himself too, because he was so worried. It was so raw because it was only 2 weeks after he passed. And so maybe I scared him because he saw my soul that was so, you know, like with so much grief, you know. And so I don't know, what do you think? I don't know.
It would be really hard to scare or startle one of our spirit loved ones who's in the process of doing some kind of communication with us. I think the thing to keep in mind is that they move quickly, you know, and their vibration seems to be very, very fast. And so just him, you know, a turn may look like that to you, but it may be like, come on, let's go. You may have awakened right as you were about to leave the body for your astral travel with him, your astral visit with him. Just a theory, but no, you cannot scare him.
No. Yeah.
No. They know, our loved ones and our guides perfectly know our hearts. So no matter, you know, what we do, they know this. They know our souls and hearts.
Yeah, because that was the first one that was weird. But then I had like much nicer, a couple nicer out about the experience where I was really, you know, going in an astral world. It was beautiful. Like Cyrus said, was the Hawaii copy of the astral world where I live. And then I met Nicholas, and he was nice and very happy. And we were able to talk and ask him questions. He said he was very happy where he was. And so that's because I felt that I was more went on his, basically, vibration, higher vibration on the astral, you know, world. And the first one was just like it was like in my room. It was like in my dance vibration. So that's what I, you know, maybe. I don't know.
And I can even add in real quick. So when we astral project, it's actually, you know, either we are going to them or they are coming to us. And if they're coming to us, we can have an even clearer memory of the communication, but it's more difficult for them. And sometimes they don't even like the mythology of the ghost who rattles chains and wears white robes. The reason for that is that sometimes when somebody from that side comes to us, they might not even always be fully formed, or they might be like more of a projection of themselves. And sometimes, you know, somebody even looks like translucent, like ghost-like, you know. And so it creates an impression, but it's not really like what they are. But then if we go to their side, then we can actually see how they're living, and we can, you know, see what's really going on. So there's strengths and weaknesses between both of these types of things. Keely, I see you have your hand raised. But real quick, anybody who has not asked a question for Susanne, do you have something you want to ask her?
Oh, I have a question, but if somebody else hasn't, they can go ahead.
Okay, we'll see if anyone who hasn't.
Yeah, I had a quick question.
Dee.
This is Dee. I had an experience, and I mentioned this before. Once when I was waking up, upon waking, I heard very clear, "Hi, Dee," and I was just wondering, was that my spirit guide? And then when I was a teenager, I had, I don't know, I guess it was a dream or whatever, but I was being held by someone. It was after someone very close to me had died. But it was just such a feeling of intense love. And I was just wondering who that was.
I'm not being told who those people were, except I am definitely picking up from your energy that you get this stuff all the time. That this is like, you may not remember, but a lot of us, when we're first waking up in the morning, we're coming out of that hypnagogic state. You know, I used to say when I was a kid, I would say, "Mom, I'm coasting." And I wasn't quite awake, and I'd just be getting back into the body from an astral experience. I think you have this all the time. And what you want to do is the next time it happens is say, "Thank you. Who was that?" And they'll tell you if it's a guide, they'll tell you if it's a loved one. Either their picture flashes in your mind's eye, or you just have a knowing of who it was. You probably are forgetting a lot of stuff that happens from that hypnagogic state or even from the astral travel the night before. And you can also ask for a sign. Like you just say, I'm really wondering all those years ago, who was it that said, hi, Dee? If it's so-and-so, can you give me a sign of, and then tell them what you're looking for, a special butterfly, a special bird or something like that. I mean, they love the give and take with us. They love the practicing, making things happen for us. But you're the best one equipped to answer who is contacting you.
Cool. Thank you, Suzanne.
You can do it.
We'll get to Keely, I guess, is the last question. I'll say, not a couple of weeks ago, I was having a hypnagogic state and kind of like in between could have been going astral. I was aware that my mom was trying to contact me, but anything she was saying, because I was in that dream state, I was responding with like nonsense. So she was saying like real stuff to me, like, how are you, Cyrus? And I'm responding with like nonsense because my mind wasn't fully there. So she's like, how was your day, Cyrus? And I'm like, I'm half asleep. I'm mumbling. It's like I didn't kick the football fast enough, and then I left the cheese in the refrigerator. Like a bunch of nonsense. And as I could see my mom was like frustrated, and then as I woke up, suddenly I heard my mom's voice come into my head. She's like, Cyrus, can you hear me? Hello. So it was like a bad mental connection with like the hypnagogic, the dream state. And she was like trying to like find a way to contact me and talk to me. And she was, but I was frustrating her because I was half asleep, Cyrus. So.
Wow. Is she doing pretty good?
I don't know I guess so. I last saw her like in her little like mobile home on the astral. That's where she likes to live. And she's her life is complicated. So I never really, I assume she's doing fine, but like I said, her life is complex sometimes, but, Keely, I know you had one more question for Susanne.
Okay. Yeah. My question was, when I was younger, I'd hear people or spirits talking to me a lot, and that's gone away. And I just wanted to shed any suggestions on how to get that back, or how we've had so many people, we love past that I'd love to talk to. And that would be wonderful to be able to get that back.
Well, the good news is it hasn't gone away. The abilities may just be dormant, waiting for you to take some action. So you've probably read that kids are more open to the spirit world. Some of the theories are that, they're more fresh from the other side. They haven't gotten their filters yet. I don't think that's true anymore because, little toddlers now have handheld devices and video games and things, and that can cause them to tune out the spirit world too. I think what it is, it goes back to intent. And if your intention is, I'm open, I'm ready to receive, you state that intention clearly whenever you're doing your affirmations, or if you have a daily grounding and centering prayer or gratitude practice, whatever you do, state your intention. I'm open to hearing from my loved ones and guides on the other side. You don't need hours and hours of meditation, but start journaling anything that happens that's above the norm. Again, I'd like the signs, symbols, synchronicities, dream visits, things like that. And look back over your notebook because you can see patterns and trends and how they're communicating with you. You don't have to go out and get a divination tool, but sometimes working with one is like psychic strength building. It's like lifting weights for the chakras. If you work with angel cards or a pendulum or anything like that, you just have to find the one thing that sort of jump starts your energy centers for you. And then they'll start coming. When they see it's not just a fad, you really mean it. You want to be in contact again, and you're willing to sit and devote, even 10 minutes a day to this is the time if anybody wants to contact me now, and you're willing to be observant to what's going on in your surroundings, they will come.
Okay. Thank you, Suzanne. Appreciate it.
All right, so I'm gonna ask you one last question, Suzanne, before we wrap up. And so, unfortunately, it might be kind of like a doozy, something that could probably be a 2-hour show. So so this is going to be the final lightning question, which probably shouldn't be at the end because this could easily send things way longer than it should. But Susanne, you've mentioned before online that like one of your guides is extraterrestrial, and I believe you said Arcturian. And I often equate this with also entities that live on the astral plane. So, a fun fact: astral Venus in this world is on this wavelength or this density is a desert. But if you go to the astral side, it's full of civilizations. So I mean, so ETs they go between worlds. Have any of your ET guides, non-human guides, other races that are kind of watching our race, watching the human race, have they said anything about like a shift happening of this world and like the astral worlds merging closer together, or maybe some kind of like an event happening that's going to reveal their presence, maybe like a solar flash or anything along those lines? I know it's maybe a few questions in one. Susanne, any ideas?
What I have been hearing about is that there's a level of frustration with interdimensional beings, with our being kind of slow to get it, but they steel themselves to be patient with us. They have no other choice. It seems to be, again, it's like a burnout position for some of them that are working so hard with the earth, but it's part of a shift in consciousness we've been hearing about for a long time. Some people thought it would happen according to a Mayan calendar or something like that, but it's really happening according to our free will on this earth. Now, I think what you're asking me is, will there be some kind of geopolitical type of event? Is that what you're asking? That will like bring people together?
Yeah, geopolitical, or also like cosmic or celestial, in the sense that, there's actually, because some people have speculated that a sudden energy shift is going to make all of us are going to suddenly, like, our minds will be working overdrive, we'll be connected telepathically for good or bad, depending on if that's a good or a bad effect on somebody. Or that right now on your day-to-day life, you might notice that people are just more telepathic. Like, you sense what the person is, thinking at, when you walk by them on the street, and people who couldn't do this before, we don't even realize it. So some sources have been saying this. I don't know if it's true or not.
Well, there is something they seem to be preparing us for that I don't have enough data to discuss yet, but it seems to be in our favor, and it seems to connect with the tacit knowledge that we're not alone in this universe. And it has nothing to do with government disclosure. The government's not concerned about raising the vibration on the earth or saving the earth or humanity or any of that sort of thing. They have short-term goals. It's more of people discovering, not only are we not alone, but we're the babies, we're the toddlers. Greg Hogan had this great saying about the other dimensions, the spirit world looks at the earth people as though we're all the babies in the neonatal unit, screaming, bitching, crying, and crapping our pants. Meanwhile, they're walking around hugging us and holding us and trying to help us, get it together. But something is happening. I don't know exactly what. I have some ideas I'm not ready to discuss, and it has to do with knowing for a fact to a person on earth that we're not alone. On the earth, it's not going to be a bad, scary, evil type of thing, but it's coming.
Let me just say, the thing is that, and I do feel pessimistic about how humans just don't seem to get it. But right now, people are really, really thirsty, and it's about the ET subjects. I travel, and there'll be the old taxi driver in a taxi in the Balkans. He's like smoking a cigarette. It's like, so you're from Los Angeles. What do you think about the aliens? Will they come yet? And I have experiences like that. What do you think about Area 51? They will go raid Area 51. Bob Lazar with the extraterrestrials, they're watching our civilization. And I've had that with multiple people, just random people you wouldn't even think, And so it's like everyone's just really, really thirsty. They want to hear about at least something like ETs. They're kind of sick of the narrative. That's just my experience. All right. Well, I guess we're just about finished. So, Susanne, thanks so much. What are you working on? Do you have any new books coming out, or anything else you want to let people on the channel know about?
Yeah. Well, you can still get Soul Smart. Their second edition came out last year. What the Dead Teach Us About Spirit Communication. And the book I'm working on right now is the Spirit Guides book, and it'll continue where Soul Smart left off. I have 2 shows available for live streaming. My website's carefreemedium.com. I hope to see some of you guys at the Soul Summit Scottsdale that's coming up in September.
Cool. Yeah. The Soul Summit, of course. Fortunately, I will not be there, but and some of you guys are from Arizona, so even if you're not, that's something to think about. And let me just pull up real quick on the share. I'll bring up Soul Smart. So there it is on my screen, which is your book, What the Dead Teach Us About Spirit Communication, second edition, forward by Victor and Wendy Zamet, friends of Afterlife Topics, who have helped pioneer life after death as a legitimate field of research. And while we are here, I will also pull up real quick. And of course, there is my most recent book, The Afterlife and Beyond, which you can get at afterlifetopics.com. An examination of life after death by an out-of-body explorer, Amazon or Kindle. So I guess that is pretty much it. So thanks everybody for coming out. Thanks a lot, Susanne. Thanks all the patrons for coming out and participating tonight. And always great, Susanne. I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. This is how we keep getting information out to people, and I think it's part of both of our missions, really. Do you have any final thoughts? I have one final thought. I'll give you one final thought, and I'll say something else. Do you have any? I'm sorry. Did you have any?
Oh, it got quiet here for a second.
Okay. Sorry. I was just saying. Did you have any one final thought before we finish?
Guys, there is a change going on the earth, and one of the things I've been hearing a lot very recently from people is their frustration with others. And I have to tell you, all we really can do is work on ourselves and let others be who they are. But by working on having more compassion in our thoughts, words, and actions for those others and for ourselves, that stuff is contagious. As you just work on yourself and your own vibration, ultimately others will either be lifted up or be out of your realm. Okay. So I hope to see some of you guys. I have a monthly chat with spirit guides too, and they've been giving us more and more information, and I'm hoping to get more about what is this event or series of events that's going to happen and get people's attention. But be prepared. You're going to find out who you really are, and you're going to find out who your neighbors and people you love on the earth really are, as we face a new reality of knowing that there's so much more than this. The reality is coming.
Yeah, I hope that reality does happen. And I guess my last thought is, if you want to have a spirit communication experience, like a real one, just go down to the 7-Eleven and talk to the cashier, because they're also a spirit. Anybody you meet is a spirit person, even if they're on this world and they don't know it. So if a spirit communication experience is actually what we're doing right now. I think people forget that sometimes. All right, so I'm now going to bounce out. Thanks again for joining us at Afterlife Topics Metaphysics, and I'll leave the chat open if anybody wants to still hang out.
Can I ask a quick question?
Oh, we have a final emergency question.
Well, Susanne said she does a monthly talking with spirit thing. I just wondered how you could find that.
Carefreemedium.com.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thanks for pointing that out. It's true. I don't think you mentioned the website address, so that's carefreemedium.com. Okay, I'm out. Thanks, guys. Until next time.
Thank you, everyone.